So today I'm going to record with a view of the outside because I want my grandchildren to remember that we do get snow in Texas every once in a while. Not very often, maybe once every 5 or 10 years. So you can have a view of the snow while I'm reading. Even though it's not much, it's a lot for Texas. Chapter 3. Along with her pretty shoes, Kit's spirits sank lower at each step. She had clutched at a hope that the dark fringe of dripping trees might somehow be concealing the town she had anticipated. But as they plodded along the dirt road past wide, stumpy fields, her last hopes died. There was no fine town of Wethersfield. There was a mere settlement, far more lonely and dreary than Saybrook. A man in a leather coat and breeches led a cow along the road. He stopped to stare at them, and even the cow looked astonished. Captain Eaton took advantage of the meeting to ask directions. "High Street," the man said, pointing his jagged stick. "Matthew Wood's place is the third house beyond the common." High Street indeed, no more than a cow path. Kit's shoes were wet through, and the soaked ruffles of her gown slapped against her ankles. She would naturally have lifted her skirts free of the uncut grass, but a new self-consciousness restrained her. She was aware at every step of the young man who strode behind her with a trunk balanced easily on each shoulder. She relaxed slightly at the first glimpse of her uncle's house. At least it looked solid and respectable compared to the cabins they had passed. 2.5 stories it stood, gracefully proportioned, with leaded glass windows and clapboards weathered to a silvery gray. The captain lifted the iron knocker and let it fall with a thud that echoed in the pit of the girl's stomach. For a moment she could not breathe at all. Then the door opened, and a thin, gray-haired woman stood on the threshold. She was quite plainly a servant, and Kit was impatient when the captain removed his hat and spoke with courtesy. "Do I have the honor of addressing—" The woman did not even hear him. Her look had flashed past to the girl who stood just behind, and her face had suddenly gone white. One hand reached to clutch the doorpost. "Margaret!" The word was no more than a whisper. For a moment the two women stared at each other. Then realization swept over Kit. "No, Aunt Rachel," she cried. "Don't look like that. It is Kit. I am Margaret's daughter." "Kit? You mean, can it possibly be Catherine Tyler?" For a moment I thought, "Oh, my dear child, how wonderful!" All at once, such a warmth and happiness swept over her pale face that Kit too was startled. Yes, this strange woman was indeed Aunt Rachel, and once, a long time ago, she must have been very beautiful. Captain Eaton cleared his throat. "Well," he observed, "I am relieved that this has turned out well after all. What will you have me do with the baggage, ma'am?" Rachel Wood's eyes focused for the first time on the 3 trunk bearers. "Goodness," she gasped. "Do all these belong to you, child? You can just set them there, I suppose, and I'll ask my husband about them. Can I offer you and your men some breakfast, sir?" "Thank you. We can't spare any more time. Good day, young lady. I'll tell my wife I saw you safely here." "I'm sorry to have caused you trouble," Kit said sincerely, "and I do thank you, all of you." 2 of the 3 sailors had already started back along the road, but Nat still stood beside the trunks and looked down at her. As their eyes met, something flashed between them, a question that was suddenly weighted with regret. But the instant was gone before she could grasp it, and the mocking light had sprung again into his eyes. "Remember," he said softly, "only the guilty ones stay afloat." And then he was gone. The doorway of Matthew Wood's house led into a shallow hallway from which a narrow flight of stairs climbed steeply. Through a second door, Kit stepped into the welcome of the great kitchen. In a fireplace that filled half one side of the room, a bright fire crackled, throwing glancing patterns of light on creamy plaster walls. There was a gleam of rubbed wood and burnished pewter. "Matthew, girls!" cried her aunt. "Something wonderful has happened. Here is Catherine Tyler, my sister Margaret's girl, come all the way from Barbados." 3 people stared up at her from the plain board table. Then, from his place at the head, a man unfolded his tall, angular body and came toward her. "You are welcome, Catherine," he said gravely, and took her hand in his bony fingers. She could not read the faintest sign of welcome in his thin, stern lips, or in the dark eyes that glowered fiercely at her from under heavy, grizzled eyebrows. Behind him a girl sprang up from the table and came forward. "This is your cousin Judith," her aunt said, and Kit gasped with pleasure. Judith's face fulfilled in every exquisite detail the picture she had treasured of her imagined aunt. The clear white skin, the blue eyes under a dark fringe of lashes, the black hair that curled against her shoulders, and the haughty lift of her perfect small chin. This girl could have been the toast of a regiment. "And your other cousin, Mercy." Sorry. The second girl had risen more slowly, and at first Kit was only aware of the most extraordinary eyes she had ever seen, gray as rain at sea, wide and clear and filled with light. Then, as Mercy stepped forward, one shoulder dipped and jerked back grotesquely, and Kit realized that she leaned on crutches. "How lovely," breathed Mercy, her voice as arresting as her eyes, "to see you after all these years, Catherine." "Will you call me Kit?" The question sounded abrupt. Kit had been her grandfather's name for her, and something in Mercy's smile had reached straight across the gulf, so that suddenly she wanted to hear the name spoken again. "Have you had breakfast?" "I guess not. I haven't even thought of it." "Then 'tis lucky we are eating late this morning," said her aunt. "Take her cloak, Judith. Come close to the fire, my dear. Your skirt is soaking." As Kit threw back the woolen cloak, Judith's reaching hand fell back. "My goodness!" she exclaimed. "You wore a dress like that to travel in?" In her eagerness to make a good impression, Kit had selected this dress with care, but here in this plain room it seemed over-elegant. The 3 other women were all wearing some nondescript sort of coarse gray stuff. Judith laid the cloak thoughtfully on a bench and reached to touch Kit's glove. "What beautiful embroidery," she said admiringly. "Do you like them? I'll give you some just like them if you like. I have several pairs in my trunk." Judith's eyes narrowed. Rachel Wood was setting out a pewter mug and spoon and a crude wooden plate. "Sit here, Catherine, where the fire will warm your back. Tell us how you happened to come so far. Did your grandfather come with you?" "My grandfather died 4 months ago," Kit explained. "Why, you poor child, all alone there on that island? Who did come with you then?" "I came alone." "Praise be," her aunt marveled. "Well, you're here safe and sound. Have some cornbread, my dear. 'Twas baked fresh yesterday, and there is new butter." Surprisingly, the bread tasted delicious, though of a coarse texture like nothing she had ever tasted before. Kit lifted the pewter mug thirstily and abruptly set it down. "Is that water?" she asked politely. "Of course, drawn fresh from the spring this morning." "Water? For breakfast?" But the cornbread was good, and she managed a second piece in spite of her dry tongue. Rachel Wood could not seem to look away from the young face across the table, and every few moments her eyes brimmed over with tears. "I declare you look so like her it takes my breath away. But all the same, there is a hint of your father there, too. I can see it if I look closely." "You remember my father?" Kit asked eagerly. "I remember him well. A fine, upstanding lad he was, and I never could blame Margaret. But it broke my heart to have her go so far." But Rachel had come even farther. What could she have seen in that fierce, silent man to draw her away from England? Could he have been handsome? Perhaps, with that strong, regal nose and high forehead, but so terrifying. Matthew Wood had not sat down at the table with the others. Though he had said nothing, Kit had been aware that not a motion had escaped his intent scowl. Now he pulled down a leather jacket from a peg on the wall and thrust his long arms into the sleeves. "I will be working in the south meadow," he told his wife. "You had best not expect me till sundown." At the open door, however, he stopped and looked back at them. "What is all this?" he inquired coldly. "Oh," said Kit, scrambling to her feet, "I forgot. Those are my trunks." "Yours? 7 trunks? What can be in them?" "Why, my clothes and a few things of grandfather's." 7 trunks of clothes all the way from Barbados just for a visit? The cold, measured words fell like so many stones into the quiet room. Kit's throat was so dry she longed now to swallow the water. She lifted her chin and looked directly into those searching eyes. "I have not come for a visit, sir," she answered. "I have come to stay with you." There was a little gasp from Rachel. Matthew Wood closed the door deliberately and came back toward the table. "Why did you not write to us first?" All her life, whenever her grandfather had asked her a question, he had expected a direct answer. Now, in this stern man facing her, so totally different from her grandfather, Kit sensed the same quality of directness, and out of an instinctive respect she gave the only honest answer she could. "I did not dare to write," she said. "I was afraid that you might not tell me to come, and I had to come." Rachel leaned forward to put a hand on Kit's arm. "We would not have refused you if you were in need," said her uncle. "But a step like this should not be taken without due pondering." "Matthew," protested Rachel timidly, "what is there to ponder? We are the only family she has. Let us talk about it later. Now Catherine is tired, and your work has been delayed already." Matthew Wood drew up a chair and sat down heavily. "The work will have to wait," he said. "It is best that we understand this matter at once. How did you come to set sail all alone?" "There was a ship in the harbor, and they said it was from Connecticut. I should have sent a letter, I know, but it might have been months before another ship came. So instead of writing, I decided to come myself." "You mean that just on an impulse you left your rightful home and sailed halfway across the world?" "No, it was not an impulse exactly. You see, I really had no home to leave." "What of your grandfather's estate? I always understood he was a wealthy man." "I suppose he was wealthy once, but he had not been well for a long time. I think for years he was not able to manage the plantation, but no one realized it. He left everything more and more to the overseer, a man named Bryant. Last winter, Bryant sold off the whole crop and then disappeared. Probably he sailed back to England on the trading ship. Grandfather couldn't believe it. After that, he was never really well. The other plantation owners were his friends. Nobody ever pressed him, but after he died, there just seemed to be debts everywhere, wherever I turned." "Did you pay them?" "Yes, every one of them. All the land had to be sold, and the house and the slaves and all the furniture from England. There wasn't anything left, not even enough for my passage. To pay my way on the ship, I had to sell my own Negro girl." "Humph." With one syllable, Matthew disposed of the sacrifice, only a little less sharp than grandfather's loss of the little African slave who had been her shadow for 12 years. There was an awkward silence. Kit found Mercy's eyes and was steadied by the quiet sympathy she saw there. Then her aunt came to put an arm across her shoulder. "Poor Catherine! It must have been terrible for you. You were perfectly right to come to us. You do believe she was right, don't you, Matthew?" "Yes," her husband conceded harshly. "She was right, I suppose, since we are her only kin. I will bring in the baggage." At the door he turned again. "Your grandfather was a king's man, I reckon." "He was a royalist, sir. Here in America are you not also subjects of King James?" Without answering, Matthew Wood left the room. 7 times he returned, bending his tall frame to enter the doorway, and with the wordless disapproval set down one after the other the 7 small trunks. They filled one entire end of the room. "Where on earth can we put them?" quavered her aunt. "I will find a place for them later in the attic," said her husband. 7 trunks. The whole town will be talking about it before nightfall. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and read another chapter. Chapter 4. As the heavy door shut behind him, the cloud gradually lifted from the room. Rachel moved nervously to the table and began to wrap the leftover cornbread in a clean linen napkin. "Before I do another thing," she said, "I must take this to Widow Brown. She's still far too weak to fend for herself. Forgive me for leaving you, Catherine, but I'll be back in no time at all." "In no time," echoed Judith bitterly, as her mother hurried out into the foggy morning. "Just as soon as she's built up the fire and made gruel and tidied the whole cabin, with more than a day's work waiting here at home." "Why, Judith," Mercy rebuked her gently, "what would you have her do? You know what the scriptures tell us about caring for the poor and the widows." "There's no scripture saying Mother has to be the one to do all the caring," Judith retorted. "She wears herself out over people like Widow Brown, and honestly, Mercy, if Mother were ill, how many of them do you think would lift a finger to help?" "I'm sure they would," said Mercy promptly. "Besides, that's not the point. You'll give Kit a fine impression of us, Judith, and anyway, we'd better start on the work that's waiting right here." Judith did not move. Her attention had turned again to the row of trunks. "Do you mean to say that every one of those trunks is full of dresses like the one you have on?" "Well, dresses and petticoats and slippers and such. You have the same things yourselves, don't you?" Mercy's laugh was a ripple of silver. "But we don't. We can't even imagine." "I can," said Judith. "I've seen the ladies in Hartford. Kit, how soon are you going to open them?" "Right now, if you like," said Kit willingly. Mercy was shocked. "Judith, what will our cousin think of us? Besides, there is all the work to be done." "Oh, Mercy, there's always work." "I don't know," said Mercy doubtfully. "Father says the Lord loveth not idleness. But then the Lord doesn't send us a new cousin every day. Perhaps he would forgive us for a little rejoicing." "Oh, come, Kit, show us now," urged Judith, taking advantage of her sister's uncertainty. Kit was only too willing. As the first lid opened, all constraint was gone. Kit had never known many girls her own age. Her own eagerness rose at the sight of the 2 eager faces so close to hers. How amazing that a few clothes could cause such excitement. Kit felt a surge of generosity that was new and exhilarating. "Imagine," cried Judith, pulling out a handsome gown of filmy silk. 5 slits in the sleeves. Our minister preached against slit sleeves, and Father won't let us make even one. And so many ribbons and bows. And oh, Kit, a red satin petticoat? How gorgeous! Here are the gloves." Kit opened a box. "There's a pair just like mine, Judith, and a pair for you, Mercy. Please, you must take them." Judith had the gloves on before the sentence was finished and stood stretching out her slender arms admiringly. Mercy stroked hers with a timid finger and laid them gently aside. Then Judith pounced on the dresses. "Try it on," suggested Kit, seeing that Judith could scarcely take her eyes from a bright peacock blue. Oh, there's a new word. Paduasoy. Okay. Someone can put a note in the comments to remind me to look this up. Paduasoy. Never seen that word before. Judith needed no urging. Dropping her own homespun skirt unashamedly on the floor, she drew the shining folds over her head. "Why, 'tis perfect!" exclaimed Kit. "It makes your eyes look almost green." Judith tiptoed across the floor, straining to see herself in the one small, dim mirror that hung over a chest. Truly, in the vivid dress, Judith was breathtaking, and she did not need the mirror to tell her so. "Oh, if William could see me in this," she breathed, ignoring Mercy's worried protests. Kit laughed delightedly. "Well, 'tis yours, Judith. 'Twas made just for you. And there's a little cap with ribbons to match. Now, where did I put it? There. Now, which one will be best for Mercy?" "Goodness, what use would I have for such things?" Mercy laughed. "I scarcely ever get to meeting." Kit hesitated, chagrined, but Judith's eye had fallen on a light blue wool, and she lifted it impulsively. "This would be perfect for Mercy," she exclaimed. Kit unfolded the delicate English shawl and dropped it across Mercy's shoulders. "Oh, Kit, how beautiful! I never felt anything so soft, like a kitten's fur." Delight and protest struggled in Mercy's face. "I can't take anything so lovely." Judith was back at the mirror. "Just wait till I walk into meeting in this on Sunday morning," she squealed. "A few people I know won't hear a word of the sermon." "Why, girls, what on earth?" Rachel Wood had come back unnoticed, and she stood now staring at her daughter in the peacock blue gown with something, half fear and half hunger, in her eyes. "Oh, Mother, look what Kit has given me!" cried Judith. "I am looking," stammered her mother. "Judith, you look... I scarcely know you." "You should, Aunt Rachel," Kit spoke up boldly, "because you must have looked just exactly like that yourself. I know, because Grandfather has told me how beautiful you were." The two girls stared at their mother in astonishment. Rachel looked dazed. "I had a dress just like that color once," she said slowly. Kit dived impulsively into the trunk. "Put this on, Aunt Rachel," she coaxed. "See, it ties under your chin like this. Oh, 'tis just perfect. Go and look at yourself." Rachel shied away from the mirror, her cheeks pink with embarrassment. Under the little beribboned bonnet the years had dropped away from her face. At her brilliant eyes and tremulous smile, her two daughters stared in unbelief. "Oh, Mother, wear that on Sunday. Promise you will." But the color had suddenly drained from Rachel's face. A chill swept across the room from the abruptly opened door. On the threshold stood Matthew Wood, staring from his awful height at the littered room, the gowns tumbled over chairs and benches, and the guilty faces of his womenfolk. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "The girls were watching Catherine unpack," Rachel explained helplessly. "How are you back so soon, Matthew?" "Can a man not come back for an axe helve without finding his house a shambles?" "I guess we forgot ourselves." Rachel's fingers jerked at the bonnet strings. Judith was not so easily intimidated. "Look, Father," she attempted. "Kit has given me this dress. Did you ever see anything so handsome?" "Give it back to her at once." "Father, no, I never had." "Do as I say," he thundered. "Uncle Matthew," broke in Kit, "you don't understand. I want her to have the dress." Her uncle regarded her with scorn. "No one in my family has any use for such frippery," he said coldly. Frippery, there's another word. I can imagine what it means, but I don't know exactly. Frippery. "Nor are we beholden on anyone's charity for our clothing." "But they are gifts," cried Kit, tears of hurt and anger springing to her eyes. "Everyone brings—" "Be quiet, girl. It is time you understood one thing at the start. This will be your home, since you have no other, but you will fit yourself to our ways and do no more to interrupt the work of the household or to turn the heads of my daughters with your vanity. Now you will close your trunks and allow them to get about the work they have neglected. Rachel, take off that ridiculous thing." "Even the gloves, Father?" Judith was still rebellious. "Everyone wears gloves to meeting." "Everything. No member of my household will appear in public in such unseemly apparel." Mercy had said no word, but now, as she folded the blue shawl and laid it quietly on top of the trunk, Rachel found courage for her only protest. "Will you allow Mercy to keep the shawl?" she pleaded. "'Tis not gaudy, and 'twill keep off the draught there by the chimney." Matthew's glance moved from the shawl to his daughter's quiet eyes, and barely perceptibly the grim line of his jaw relaxed. So there was one weakness in this hard man. "Very well, Mercy may keep the shawl. I thank you for it." The bitter word was forced out just in time. Had it not been for this hint of grace, Kit's anger might have erupted in a scene that would have spoiled all her chances on this first morning. As it was, she felt an unwilling respect that made her hold her tongue and set to work folding and replacing the piles of clothing. Judith's tears were packed away in the folds of the blue dress. There was silence after the door had shut once more. "Well," sighed Rachel, "'tis all my fault. I can't blame you girls, but at my age, and the board not even cleared from breakfast." Kit looked back at the table curiously. "Don't the servants do that?" she inquired. "We have no servants," said her aunt quietly. Surprise and chagrin left Kit speechless. "I can help with the work," she offered finally, realizing that she sounded like an overeager child. "In that dress?" Judith protested. "I'll find something else. Here, this calico will do, won't it?" "To work in?" Disappointment had put an edge to Judith's tongue. "'Tis all I have," retorted Kit. "Give me something of yours, then." Judith's cheeks went scarlet. "Oh, wear that one. You can help Mercy with the carding. You won't dirty yourself at that." Kit shortly repented her offer. For 4 mortal hours she sat on a wooden bench and struggled to grasp the tricky process of carding wool. Mercy demonstrated on 2 pieces of thin board to which were fastened strips of leather set with hooked wire teeth. From a great pile of heavy blue wool she pulled a small tuft, caught it in the wire teeth of one board, and drew across it the second board till the fibers were brushed flat. "Isn't the color pretty?" she inquired. Mother promised Judith that if she helped with the shearing this year, we could buy some indigo from the West Indies. Judith hates handling the greasy wool and washing it, but she will be happy with the blue cloth. In one deft motion, she plucked the wool from the teeth and rolled it into a fluffy ball. It looked so easy, but the moment Kit took the wool cards into her hand, she appreciated Mercy's skill. They were such awkward things. The wool fluffed and stuck to her fingers and snarled in clumps. She suspected that Judith had chosen this task on purpose. "You're getting the knack," approved Mercy, when a few misshapen little balls finally lay in the basket. Kit eyed the great heap of wool. "You have to do all that by yourself?" "Oh, the others help between times. But of course there are so many things I can't do. You don't know how nice it is to have you to help. 'Tis a marvel how much faster the work goes when there's someone to talk to." Fast! All this time and that great pile hardly touched. But Mercy had sounded sincere. How dreary it must be for her, working here day after day. Kit was ashamed of her own impatience. Suddenly, under Mercy's friendly smile, the question that had been troubling her all the morning burst out. "Do you think I did wrong, Mercy, to come here?" "You did exactly right," smiled Mercy. "But your father doesn't mean to be unkind. It has been very hard for him here in Connecticut." In the months since her grandfather died, there had been no one whom Kit could trust. Now she found herself saying the words she had never dared to speak. "It had to come, Mercy. There was another reason. I couldn't say it this morning, but there was a man on the island, a friend of grandfather's. He used to come often, and afterwards I found he had lent grandfather money. hundreds of pounds. He didn't want the money back. He wanted me to marry him. He tried to make me think that grandfather had wanted it, but I'm sure that was not so. He wanted to pay everything. He would even have kept the house for us to live in. Everyone expected me to marry him. The women kept telling me what a wonderful match it was. Kit, how could they? Was he dreadful? No, he wasn't really. He was very kind. But mercy, he was 50 years old, and he had pudgy red fingers with too many rings on them. You see, Mercy, why I couldn't wait to write? You do see why I can't go back, don't you? Of course you can't go back, said Mercy firmly. Her hand reached for Kit's and pressed it warmly. Father has no intention of sending you back. You will just have to prove to him that you can be useful here. By the end of that first day, the word useful had taken on an alarming meaning. Work in that household never ceased, and it called for skill and patience, qualities Kit did not seem to possess. There was meat to be chopped and vegetables to prepare for the midday meal. The pewter mugs had to be scoured with reeds and fine sand. There was a great kettle of soap boiling over a fire just behind the house, and all day long Judith and her mother took turns stirring it with a long stick. Judith set Kit to tend the stirring while she readied the soap barrel. Kit tried to keep a gingerly distance from the kettle. The strong fumes of lye stung her eyelids, and stirring the heavy mass tired her arms and shoulders. Her stirring became more and more half-hearted, till Judith snatched the stick in exasperation. "It will lump on you," she scolded, "and you can just blame yourself if we have to use lumpy soap all summer." Toward evening they set her at the easiest task they could devise, the making of corn pudding. The cornmeal had to be added to the boiling kettle a pinch at a time. Before half of it was consumed, Kit's patience ran out. The smoke made her eyes water, and there was a smarting blister on one thumb. She suspected that Judith had invented the irksome procedure just to keep her busy, and in a burst of resentment she poured in the remaining cupful all at once. She learned her mistake when the lumpy, indigestible mass was ladled onto her wooden trencher. There was nothing else for supper. After one shocked stare, the family downed the mess in a silence that made Kit writhe. After the candles were lit, Rachel and the two girls picked up skeins of yarn and began to knit as Matthew drew the great Bible toward him across the table. Matthew's voice was harsh and monotonous. Kit could not keep her mind on the words. Every muscle in her body ached with weariness. As the reading went on, her head grew heavier, and twice she jerked herself painfully back from the brink of sleep. The others, intent on their knitting, did not notice. Only when her uncle closed the book and bent his head for the long evening prayer did the clicking needles cease. Kit, in her eagerness, went up ahead with a candle into the chilly bedchamber. But once there, she remembered that in the morning she would need a fresh gown from the trunks to replace the soot-stained calico. Going back down the stairs, she overheard some words not intended for her ears. "Why does she have to sleep with me?" Judith demanded in a sulky tone. "Why, daughter," her mother rebuked her, "are you not willing that your cousin should share with you? If I have to share my bed, will she share my work? Or will she expect us all to wait on her hand and foot like her black slaves? Shame, Judith." The child tried her best, you know that. A 5-year-old could do better. As if things weren't bad enough here in this house. If we had to have a cousin at all, why couldn't it have been a boy? A boy? Rachel's answer was a long sigh. Yes, a boy would have been different, that's true. Poor Matthew. Turning, Kit fled up the stairs. When Judith came to bed, she was already under the covers, huddled far over to one side of the wide bed, her face hidden against a damp pillow. For a long time after Judith blew out the candle, Kit lay rigid, fearful that a single sniff might give her away. but the feather mattress was deliciously soft, and her weary nerves gradually relaxed. Suddenly, however, she sat straight up. "What was that?" she quavered, forgetting her pride. "What was what?" yawned Judith crossly. The long, eerie noise sounded again. "Indians?" "Oh, that's only a wolf," scoffed Judith. "Goodness, you're not making all that fuss about one old wolf. Wait till you hear a pack of them." Until next time.